everybody, it's Gio. Welcome back to my channel. So the first week of season 2 of the Overwatch League has now been around, which is kind of crazy to think about. It's already started. Like, I went 6 months becoming used to not having it, and now I'm already addicted again, but you know. So we've actually been able to see all of the expansion teams playing now, all these teams that have so far been an enigma that everybody's been making predictions about, and now we actually know something about them. And I wanted to talk about one of these teams in particular today. So the team that has really captured my heart this week is the Hangzhou Spark. I just really love everything about them. I really love, I mean, even down to the branding, the social media, but also the way they play, they're so entertaining to watch. They have kind of been heralded as the best expansion team before we came into the Overwatch League. Obviously, we didn't really know all that much about the Vancouver Titans because they hadn't really scrimmed with everybody. So it's been really interesting to see how they've played, and honestly, I've loved every second. They beat the Shanghai Dragons 3-1 and the LA Valiant 3-2, so they're actually 2-0 right now, which is very impressive. So I wanted to talk about some of my first impressions of the team, so some of the really good things that we've been seeing, as well as some of the shortfallings as well. So the first thing that I wanted to talk about was the supports and tanks being rotated a lot. So one of the things that we've seen in other teams, and that people have feared for a number of the expansion teams when trying to predict starting rosters, is that certain players would basically be permabenched, especially players where there's a language barrier issue. And that is something that we do see in the Hangzhou Spark, where we have players like Gushui, Crystal, who we haven't actually yet seen play, who are Chinese, where the rest of the team is Korean. And maybe that would mean that they wouldn't be played as much. But actually, we've pretty much seen Gushui and No Smite both be rotated into the main tank role quite a lot. We've had a lot of playtime from both of them, and the same with Bebe and Revenge. Now, this is really great because it shows the team have a lot of faith and confidence in all of their players, especially as both Bebe and No Smite came from X6 along with Rhea and Godsby. So that kind of makes up the core of the team, and you'd sort of expect, especially with that pre-existing synergy, for them to be really favored. So it's really nice that Revenge and Gushui are both being played a lot as well, even though they don't have that. Now, I want to focus a little bit on the support play as well, because it's been really impressive. And at the time of preparing for this video, which was the 17th of February, so there was still 1 day of week 1 to go, so some of these stats may not be the same right now, but Bebe sat in the league rankings as the second highest healing per 10 minutes of all, well, I was going to say of all the support players, but actually of anybody in the league. He has an average of 10,416 healing per second. Combined with IDK, this gives an average of 16,205, and with Revenge in place of Bebe, it goes down to 15,091. Their overall healing was slightly less than LA Valiant's, which was 16,445, but much higher than the Shanghai Dragons, which was 13,497. And it's also worth mentioning that Bebe and IDK together had the highest damage output per 10 out of all 3 teams, with 12,568. Now, you may be wondering why the flex support is getting a lot more healing than the main support, and it is a valid question, but it's worth noting that in the current meta, the main support actually has a lot more of a job than just healing. Last series, we saw the main support primarily sitting on Mercy, and she is a really big healing outputter, as well as switching to that damage boost sometimes, but you frequently see the main support now on the Lucio, and Lucio doesn't just heal, he also uses the speed boost to be able to time engagements and disengagements very well, allowing the team to move around very quickly, as well as using the boops to either force or punish poor positioning onto the enemy team. So for example, you could use the boop combined with a self-destruct on your team, and you can boop the enemy team to get them in that perfect position where the self-destruct's going to get as many kills as possible. You could also use the boop to punish poor positioning, whether an enemy is right next to a pit, down which you can sort of boop them and get that environmental kill. So Lucio does have a lot of utility, and it's something that IDK is utilizing very well. For example, we can see in this clip where he combines his boot with Rhea's self-destruct to ensure that it can't be blocked and actually guarantees those kills. And it's really impressive that IDK is getting this level of coordination with the team, given that he came from Lucky Future Zenith and actually has no pre-existing synergy with members of the Hangzhou Spark. This is something that's actually only going to get better as that synergy builds and builds, so it's really noteworthy that he's actually achieving coordination like this on the first week. Now, the next thing I wanted to talk about was team coordination. This is something that Hangzhou Spark have shown that they're actually very, very good at so far. They have such clean coordination on their attacks and their ult usage, and it really allows them to get the maximum value out of the things that they are doing. And actually, if you have a look at their damage to elimination ratio, it's fairly low, which means they're not kind of just firing off and getting random damage, but they're actually getting these very clean kills. Now, of all the members of the Hangzhou Spark, Rhea has the highest eliminations per 10 minutes, which isn't too rare for a diva, but it's also a testament to the fact that he's getting so many eliminations with his self-destruct. But it's not just solo vanilla self-destructs, it's things that have been set up by his team, and they're all working together and coordinating to be able to achieve those results. Now, in this clip, we see Rhea get a very impressive 4K with his self-destruct. It's actually only once Godsby and Gushui have brought down Fate, and therefore his shield, so that the self-destruct can't be blocked, with a combination of the Graviton Surge and the Earth Shatter. Making LA Valiant that vulnerable is what allows Rhea to get so much value from his ultimate. Now here we see Hangzhou actually win the team fight even after No Smite gets his Earth Shatter cancelled. Now, when you're running a 3-3 composition, this can be game changing, because one of the big things that you want to be able to do is what's known as cyclical ult generation, where you build up a Graviton Surge off of the people who've fallen victim to an Earth Shatter, and you can build up an Earth Shatter from cleaving into a Graviton Surge. So losing that kind of ultimate from your fight can really cause you to lose it. So it's actually amazing that they managed to turn this fight around anyway. We see actually Fate, he immediately shields his team to try and stop Godsby from attempting to grab them. Rhea gets behind the team, he distracts Agilities, and that allows Godsby to get in place out of Kariv and the support's line of sight. And that means he can land his Graviton straight in on the team, and Rhea just places his self-destruct perfectly to get that multi-kill. And we actually see similar levels of coordination used with Gushui, which inspires such respect from the team, given the fact they have this language barrier with him. We see Gushui build an Earth Shatter in just a few seconds, which is something only possible with a significant amount of aggression. But this is really enabled by the team, with Bebe's perfect Transcendence, as well as the Repair Pack and Harmony Orb being placed on Gushui. So the resources are being invested into him to allow him to build up this ultimate. IDK's Sound Barrier gives that extra overshield to keep the team alive throughout the aggression. And it's not just Gushui who can build up these really fast Earth Shatters. Both of these main tanks on this team are very, very impressive. In this clip, we can see No Smite building up an Earth Shatter very quickly as well, even after receiving a shield bash off of Agilities and a Bubble Fate pushing up on him. The rally from Bazi gave him the extra armor, and Godspeed perfectly times a barrier onto him to absorb 200 HP from the 300 damage charge from Fate. Charging Fate in return doubles his ult charge, and the healing he receives allows him to continue moving forward to shield his teammates and damage Valiant. And after a couple of fire strikes, he has another Earth Shatter ready to go. So it's all well and good talking about the great things that Hangzhou have done, but we do have to look at maybe where some of their shortfallings are. And I think there are two main things, is they are guilty of over-aggression, and sometimes they underestimate the enemy ultimates. So for examples of these two things, I've looked to some of the maps where they lost them to see how their lost team fights actually went. So for over-aggression, we'll start with, in this overtime fight that lost Hangzhou the map, we can actually see that Hangzhou bring down Fate to a really low HP, but they're unable to finish him off as he receives a projected barrier from Kariv. However, Gushui is so far forward that he easily gets punished, especially as IDK is using his speed boost rather than healing aura, and the Harmony Orb is on Godsby. Now, when we move on to underestimating ults, there are a couple more examples. So in this fight, LA Valiant won this fight super cleanly after Fate got a massive Earth Shatter on most of Hangzhou, which was possible as once Gushui received his Repair Pack from Bazi, he took the opportunity to use a Fire Strike. In the time his shield was down, Fate used his Earth Shatter, and LA Valiant were able to clean up the team very easily. Similar thing happens here, where Gushui backs off due to his low health, giving Fate the opportunity to land his Earth Shatter on the rest of Hangzhou. Hangzhou do use their Graviton, but LA Valiant have their Sound Barrier ready. When they then use their own Graviton in return, Hangzhou actually have no protection as they use both of their support ultimates in the fight already. Now, this is the fight that lost them Horizon Lunar Colony to the Shanghai Dragons. Hangzhou nearly have tank configuration and supercharger and likely see them as their easy win conditions. They position themselves on the floor rather than having the Bastion out of reach on the high ground somewhere. However, they underestimate Shanghai's Nano Death Blossom. This, combined with Ding's hacks, takes out Bazzi and Revenge very quickly, and Youngjin is left to easily bring down No Smite and his supercharger. And then Gaguri's Minefield pushes IDK off the point and Shanghai win the map. So from this, we can see that Hangzhou have definitely got some really good things going on for them, and when they can coordinate themselves really well, they do it really well. They definitely know where each other are and what they're all doing with respect to each other, but sometimes they fall a little bit short when trying to track what's going on with the enemy team and making the judgments about how the enemy team are going to respond. They sort of have their own plan in their own heads and don't necessarily consider as far as they perhaps should when it comes to the enemy. So I'm really interested to see how this team continues and what improvements they make. I am definitely rooting for this team. I've become a fan pretty quickly. So I'm very excited to see how they continue on through the season, and if this first week has been anything to go by, then it's going to be a massive season. But let me know what you think of any of my examples, and if you have anything else to add, maybe you've got another idea of something they do particularly well or something that they kind of fall short on, let me know in the comments. I'm really interested to know all of your analysis and everything that you have to say. But as for now, I'll see you in the next video. Stay classy, guys.